The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species. It floated in the darkness of space, a station the size of a small moon. Inside, representatives from 300 alien civilizations sat in rising rows that reached toward a ceiling made of living crystal. The crystal changed colors based on the mood of the room. Today, it glowed a cold, satisfied blue dot. Ambassador Jack Moore stood alone on the speaking platform at the center of the hall. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served as humanity's voice in this place for 12 years. In that time, he had learned one important truth about the galaxy. The older species did not like change, and humanity was nothing but change. The vote had just finished. The numbers floated in the air above him, written in light. 312 in favor, 47 against, 11 abstained. The motion had passed. Jack read the words of the resolution one more time, though he had already memorized them. The Galactic Council hereby restricts all human military vessels to the Sol system. Human trade ships will require Council approval for each journey. Human colonies outside designated zones will be dissolved within 1 standard year. In simple terms, humanity had just been kicked out of the galaxy. High Councilorella of the Villani rose from her seat in the front row. Her species was ancient, with pale blue skin and eyes that held no pupils. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "The Council thanks Ambassador Moore for his years of service," she said. Her voice was smooth and cold. "We hope humanity will use this time to reflect on their behavior. Perhaps in a few centuries, when your species has matured, we can discuss rejoining the galactic community." Jack said nothing. He had learned long ago that arguing with the Council was pointless. They had made up their minds about humanity the day humans first arrived. Everything since then had just been confirmation of what they already believed. The Villani thought humans were too aggressive. The Keth thought humans expanded too fast. The Tauran thought humans asked too many questions. And everyone thought humans were too young, too loud, and too different. What none of them understood was that humans had been holding the galaxy together for 15 years. Jack picked up his documents and placed them in his bag. He looked up at the hundreds of alien faces watching him. Some looked pleased. Some looked nervous. A few from species that had worked closely with humans looked genuinely sad. "I have one message for the Council," Jack said. His voice was calm. "You have made your choice. We will respect it." He walked off the platform and through the great doors. His staff was waiting outside, 5 humans who had served with him through years of difficult negotiations. They fell into step beside him as he walked toward the docking bay. "Sir," said his assistant, a young woman named Beth Taylor, "what do we do now?" "Now we go home," Jack said. "And we stay there." He pulled out his communication device and typed a single message to Earth Command. "They have made their choice." He pressed send and put the device away. Within 6 hours, the recall orders went out to every human ship, station, and outpost in the galaxy. There were thousands of them. Human patrol fleets protecting trade routes. Human engineers maintaining power systems on alien worlds. Human doctors running medical stations. Human teachers at exchange programs. Human soldiers standing guard on borders that alien species were too afraid to defend themselves. All of them received the same message. "Come home." Now, Captain Mike Torres was commanding a patrol fleet in the outer territories when the order arrived. For 8 years, his ships had kept the Blackfin Raiders from attacking civilian colonies. The Raiders were a loose collection of pirates, criminals, and outcasts from a dozen species. They feared nothing except human weapons. Mike read the recall order twice. Then he called his crew together. "We are leaving," he said. Tonight. His first officer, a man named Dan Cooper, stared at him. Sir, if we leave, the raiders will hit these colonies within a week. The Tauroan cannot defend themselves. I know, Mike said. But we have our orders. The council voted to restrict us. We are respecting their wishes. But the civilians made their choice when they voted, Mike finished. Or their representatives did. Either way, we cannot stay where we are not wanted. That night, the patrol fleet jumped to hyperspace. Behind them, the outer territories fell silent. The colonies there did not know it yet, but their protection had just disappeared. On the Keth homeworld, human agricultural engineers received their recall orders in the middle of harvest season. For 10 years, they had kept the food production systems running. The machines were human designs. The seeds were human modifications. Without human expertise, the Keth had no idea how to maintain any of it. The lead engineer, a woman named Carol West, tried to explain the systems to her Keth counterparts before she left. She had 3 days. It was not enough time. The filtration system needs daily adjustments, she said, pointing at a panel covered in buttons and screens. If the pH levels drop below 7, the whole crop will die. The Keth technician stared at the panel with 4 confused eyes. We will manage, he said, though his voice was uncertain. Carol wanted to stay. She had friends here. She had built a life. But the orders were clear, and she understood why. The galaxy had told humanity to leave. So humanity would leave. Back on the council station, High Counselor Rella celebrated with her allies. They drank expensive wine and spoke of the future they had secured. The humans were becoming too powerful, said Counselor Thresh of the Tauroan, a large creature covered in thick scales. They controlled too much trade. Their military was everywhere. It was only a matter of time before they tried to take over. Exactly, Rella agreed. We stopped them before they could become a threat. Do you think they will cause trouble? Asked Counselor Ven of the Keth, a smaller being with 4 arms and nervous movements. What can they do? Rella laughed. They are one species. We are 300. They need us far more than we need them. She raised a glass. To the Galactic Council. May it stand for another 12,000 years. They drank together, satisfied with their victory. None of them noticed the human ships jumping away, one by one, leaving empty space behind them. None of them noticed the shadows growing at the edges of civilization. None of them noticed the silence that was beginning to spread. Ambassador Jack Moore sat alone in his cabin during the long journey back to Earth. He looked out the window at the stars passing by. Somewhere out there, species who had voted against humanity were going to learn a hard lesson. He did not feel angry. He did not feel sad. He just felt tired. We tried to help them, he said quietly to himself. We really did. The ship jumped to hyperspace, and the Galactic Council became a distant memory. Humanity was going home, and the galaxy, for the first time in 15 years, was on its own. 3 months passed after the humans left. At first, the galaxy barely noticed. The council held its regular meetings. Trade ships still flew between stars. Life continued as it always had. Then the problems began. Counselor Van of the Keth was the first to sound the alarm. He stood before the council with shaking hands and fear in his 4 eyes. His species had always been nervous, but today he looked truly terrified. Our food production has collapsed, he announced. 60% of our agricultural systems have failed. We have 3 months of reserves. After that, 12 billion of our people will begin to starve. The Great Hall fell silent. The crystal ceiling flickered from blue to an uncertain gray. How is this possible? Asked High Counselor Rella. Your species has farmed for thousands of years. Our old methods could feed 2 billion, Then explained. The humans gave us new technology. new machines, new seeds. We grew dependent on their systems. Now those systems are breaking down, and we do not know how to fix them. Rella frowned. Then contact the human engineers. Hired them back. We tried. Ven's voice cracked. They will not answer our messages. No human will. We have sent hundreds of communications to Earth. Every single one has been ignored. This news spread through the council like fire. Other species began checking their own systems. They found the same problem everywhere. Human technology was failing, and no one knew how to repair it. But food was not the only crisis. 2 weeks later, the first attack came. The Blackfin raiders had been waiting in the shadows of the outer territories. For 15 years, human patrol fleets had kept them contained. The raiders remembered what happened to ships that crossed Captain Mike Torres. He had destroyed entire pirate bases without losing a single vessel. His name was spoken with fear across the lawless regions of space. But Mike Torres was gone now. His fleet was back in the Sol system, and the outer territories had no protection. The raiders struck a Tauruan mining colony first. They came with 30 ships, more than the colony had ever seen. The local defense force was small and poorly trained. They had never fought a real battle. For centuries, they had relied on human protection. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the colony was burning. 3,000 Tauruan miners were dead. The raiders took everything of value and vanished into deep space. Counselor Thresh of the Tauruan demanded action from the council. We must send our fleet to hunt these criminals, he roared, his scales turning dark with anger. Send them where? Asked Rella. The raiders could be anywhere. The outer territories span 800 systems. The humans used to patrol all of them, Thresh said bitterly. The humans are gone. We must defend ourselves now. So the Tauruans sent their fleet. It was the largest military force their species had assembled in 500 years. 80 warships with the best weapons their engineers could build. They found the raiders 3 weeks later, hiding in an asteroid field near a dead star. The Tauruan commander, a proud officer named Krath, ordered an immediate attack. He expected an easy victory. He was wrong. The raiders were not afraid of the Tauruan. They had fought Tauruan ships before, back when human fleets were not watching. They knew exactly how to beat them. The battle was a disaster. The Tauruan ships were larger, but the raiders were faster. The Tauruan weapons were powerful, but their targeting systems could not track the small, quick enemy vessels. The Tauruan crews were disciplined, but they had no experience with real combat. 42 ships were destroyed. Commander Krath died on his bridge when a raider missile tore through his hull. The survivors retreated in chaos, leaving the outer territories more undefended than before. The news shocked the entire galaxy. The Tauruan had one of the oldest militaries in the council. If they could not defeat simple pirates, who could? Meanwhile, the economic problems grew worse. Trade Ambassador Tom Ellis had been the most important human in the galaxy that no one talked about. He did not command fleets or speak at council meetings. He simply made sure that cargo moved from place to place efficiently. Tom had created the shipping networks that connected 90 star systems. His logistics programs calculated the fastest routes, the safest passages, and the best schedules. Before him, delivering goods across the galaxy took months. With his systems, it took weeks. Now those systems were shutting down, one by one. The programs needed human operators. The networks needed human updates. Without Tom and his team, the whole structure was falling apart. Ships sat in ports waiting for clearance that never came. Cargo rotted in warehouses because no one knew where to send it. Prices rose. Supplies fell. Species that had traded freely for years suddenly could not get basic goods. The smaller species suffered most. They depended on trade to survive. When the shipping networks failed, they began to collapse. High Counselor Rella watched all of this from her office on the council station. Every day brought new reports of disasters. Starvation on the Keth worlds. Pirate attacks in the outer territories. Economic collapse in the trading hubs. Refugee ships flooding toward the core systems. "This cannot be happening," she said to her assistant. "We have managed this galaxy for 12,000 years. How can everything fall apart in 3 months?" Her assistant, a young Vellani named Shara, spoke carefully. "The humans were doing more than we realized. They filled gaps we did not know existed. Then, we must fill those gaps ourselves. We are trying. But our experts say it will take years to rebuild what the humans created. We do not have years." Rella stood and walked to her window. Outside, she could see ships moving through space. Fewer ships than before. The traffic around the station had dropped by half since the humans left. "Contact Earth again," she ordered. "Use every channel. Send the message directly to their government. They will not answer. Try anyway." The message went out that night. It was formal and carefully written. The Galactic Council requested a meeting to discuss the restoration of relations with humanity. The Council recognized that perhaps the recent vote had been hasty. The Council hoped that cooler heads could prevail. The response came 12 hours later. It was not from the human government. It was from an automated system at the edge of the Sol system. The United Earth government is not accepting communications from Galactic Council species at this time. Have a pleasant day. Rella read the message 3 times. She could not believe it. Humanity was ignoring them, completely, totally, as if the Galactic Council did not exist. "Send another message," she ordered. Same response came back. "Send it again." Same response. "Keep sending until someone answers." Her staff sent 400 messages over the next week. Every single one received the same automated reply. The humans were not angry. They were not threatening. They were simply not interested in talking. Across the galaxy, the collapse continued. The Keth began rationing food. The Toruan abandoned their outer colonies. The trade networks slowed to a crawl. Species that had lived in peace for centuries started fighting over resources. And through it all, Earth remained silent. The humans stayed inside their system, protected by the most advanced defense network in the galaxy. They watched the chaos unfold on their screens. They read the desperate messages that piled up in their automated response systems. And they did nothing. Admiral Steve Parker sat in his office on Earth's orbital defense station. He drank his morning coffee and reviewed the latest intelligence reports from beyond the Sol border. Pirates growing bolder. Economies crashing. Governments failing. "Told them this would happen," he muttered to himself. "Nobody ever listens." He finished his coffee and went back to work. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was burning. But that was not his problem anymore. The Council had made sure of that. 6 months after the humans withdrew, the galaxy reached its breaking point. What had started as small problems had grown into total disaster. Systems that had worked for centuries stopped working. Alliances that had held for thousands of years shattered. The Galactic Council, the oldest and most powerful organization in known space, was falling apart. High Counselor Rella could no longer sleep. She spent her nights reading reports that grew worse by the hour. The Keth food crisis had spread to 9 other species who depended on Keth exports. The Blackfin Raiders now controlled 30 systems that used to belong to Council members. 12 species had formally withdrawn from the Council, choosing to fend for themselves rather than sync with everyone else. She had tried everything. She had called emergency meetings. She had proposed new defense plans. She had offered money, ships, and soldiers to anyone who would help. Nothing worked. The truth was simple and terrible. The galaxy had been held together by humans, and now the humans were gone. Rella made a decision that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. She would go to Earth herself. She would stand before the human government and ask for help. She would apologize if she had to. She would beg if nothing else worked. Her advisors told her it was a mistake. "They will humiliate you," said Shara, her most trusted assistant. "They will make you wait. They will record everything and share it across the galaxy. You will look weak." "I already look weak," Rella replied. "I led the vote that caused this disaster. If I do not fix it, my name will be cursed for the rest of history." She took a small ship with a crew of 12. No escort fleet. No military protection. She wanted to show the humans that she came in peace, not as a threat. The journey to Sol took 2 weeks. Rella spent the time preparing what she would say. She practiced speeches. She wrote letters. She imagined every possible response and planned her answers. By the time her ship reached the edge of human space, she felt ready for anything. She was not ready for what happened next. A human defense station appeared on her sensors almost immediately. It was massive, bristling with weapons that her ship could not even identify. Before she could send a greeting, a voice crackled over her communication system. "Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify yourself and state your purpose." The voice belonged to a young human woman. Her tone was professional but cold. There was no welcome in it. "This is High Counselor Rella of the Villani," Rella said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am here on a diplomatic mission. I request permission to continue to Earth and speak with your government." There was a long pause. Rella could imagine the young officer checking with her superiors, passing her name up the chain of command. She waited, her heart beating faster with each second. Finally, the voice returned. "One moment, please." More waiting. Rella stared out her window at the defense station. It hung in space like a predator watching its prey. She had seen human military technology before, but never this close. It was impressive. It was also terrifying. The voice came back. "High Counselor Rella, Earth respectfully declines your request for a meeting." Rella felt the words like a physical blow. I do not understand." "I am offering to negotiate. To discuss restoring our relationship. Earth is not interested in negotiations at this time. You are free to leave." "Thank you for your understanding." "Please," Rella said, and she hated how desperate she sounded. "You must understand what is happening out there. Millions of people are dying. Entire civilizations are collapsing. We need your help." There was another pause. When the officer spoke again, her voice had not changed at all. "The Galactic Council voted that human presence in the galaxy was destabilizing. We are respecting your wishes. If you believe you made a mistake, that is unfortunate, but it does not change our position. I am asking you as one person to another, not as a counselor, just as someone who is watching her people suffer." "I understand, ma'am." My answer remains the same. Safe travels. The communication ended. Rella sat in silence for a long time. Her crew watched her, waiting for orders. She had nothing to say. Finally, she turned her ship around and began the long journey home, while Rella traveled through empty space. The collapse continued. The Blackfin Raiders had grown from a nuisance into an empire. They controlled territory now, real territory with planets and populations. They demanded tribute from nearby systems. They captured ships and enslaved their crews. They did whatever they wanted because no one could stop them. Other criminal organizations noticed the raiders' success. New pirate groups formed almost daily. Some were small, just a few ships looking for easy targets. Others were large enough to threaten whole sectors. The lawless regions of space were spreading like a disease. The Tauron tried one more military campaign against the raiders. They gathered what remained of their fleet and attacked the raiders' main base. They lost badly. Again, the Tauron military was finished. They no longer had enough ships to protect even their home system. Economic collapse spread to the core worlds. Species that had been wealthy for millennia found themselves unable to buy food, medicine, or fuel. The trade networks that humans had built were completely dead now. Each system was on its own. On the Keth homeworld, the first famine deaths were reported. Despite rationing, despite emergency measures, the food had run out. Keth citizens rioted in the streets of their capital city. Their government declared martial law, but even the soldiers were hungry. The Galactic Council met in emergency session every day. The meetings accomplished nothing. Each species blamed the others. Old grudges resurfaced. Old enemies became enemies again. "This is your fault," Councillor Thresh shouted at Rella during one particularly angry session. "You led the vote against the humans. You convinced us they were dangerous." "You voted yes," Rella shouted back. "Every single one of you voted yes. Do not blame me for a decision we all made together. We made it because you lied to us. You said the humans were trying to take over. You said we had to act before it was too late. I believed it was true. Well, you were wrong. And now my people are dying because of your mistake." The argument went on for hours. Nothing was decided. Nothing was solved. Back on Earth, the humans watched everything from a safe distance. Their spy satellites recorded the council meetings. Their intelligence analysts read every message that crossed the galactic communication networks. They knew exactly how bad things were. Admiral Steve Parker briefed the military council every week. He showed them maps of raider territory, charts of economic decline, estimates of death tolls. The numbers were staggering. "At the current rate," he said during one briefing, "the Galactic Council will effectively cease to exist within 2 years. Half of its member species will be conquered, collapsed, or withdrawn. The other half will be too weak to matter." General Maria Santos, the commander of Earth's ground forces, shook her head. "And we are just going to let that happen." "Those were our orders," Harker replied. "The council told us to leave. We left. They have not asked us to come back." Councilor Rella came to the border last week. She asked for help. She asked for a meeting. That is not the same as asking for help. And even if it was, she does not speak for the council. She speaks for herself. Until the council as a whole officially requests our return, we stay here. Santos frowned. "How many people will die while we wait for official requests?" Parker did not answer. He did not have to. Everyone in the room knew the answer was millions. Maybe billions, but orders were orders. The humans stayed home. The galaxy burned. And somewhere in the void between stars, High Counselor Rella flew alone through the darkness, carrying the weight of a disaster she had helped create. She would not give up. She could not give up. There had to be a way to fix this. There had to be a way to bring the humans back. She just had to figure out what they wanted. What would make them say yes? What would make them care again? The answer, she would eventually learn, was simpler and harder than she ever imagined. 1 year had passed since humanity withdrew from galactic affairs. In that time, the universe had changed more than it had in the previous 1,000 years. Empires had fallen. Species had scattered. The order that everyone had taken for granted was gone. The Galactic Council still existed, but barely. Fewer than 200 species remained as members, down from 300. The Great Hall felt empty during meetings. The crystal ceiling, which once glowed with confident colors, now flickered uncertainly between gray and pale yellow. It was in this broken place that something unprecedented happened. For the first time in 12,000 years of Council history, a formal delegation was sent not to demand something, but to ask for it. 12 species joined together to make the journey to Earth. The Volani sent High Counselor Rella, humbled but determined. The Keth sent Counselor Ven, thin from months of reduced rations. The Torun sent the new Counselor Krath, nephew of the commander who had died fighting pirates. 9 other species sent their own representatives, each one carrying the hopes of their people. Their ships arrived at the Sol border in formation. This time, they sent their message before entering restricted space. They waited for permission. They followed every rule. Lieutenant Amy Cole was on duty at the defense station when the delegation arrived. She recognized the Volani ship immediately. She had turned away High Counselor Rella 6 months ago. Now here she was again, with 11 other species behind her. Amy contacted her superiors. The message went up the chain of command quickly. Within an hour, it reached the desk of President Lisa Grant. The president read the request carefully. 12 species were asking for a formal meeting. Not just a conversation at the border. A real diplomatic meeting on Earth. They were willing to come to humanity, rather than asking humanity to come to them. This is new, President Grant said to her Secretary of State, David Park. It is, Park agreed. He was a careful man who had spent 30 years in diplomacy. He had seen many things, but he had never seen alien species come to Earth asking for help. The question is whether we should accept. What is your recommendation? Park thought for a moment. We should hear them out. If nothing else, it will give us information about conditions beyond our border. We have been relying on spy satellites and intercepted communications. Direct testimony from council leaders would be more useful. And if they ask us to come back, then we decide what terms we would accept, assuming we want to go back at all. President Grant nodded slowly. She picked up her communication device and made a call. 2 days later, the alien delegation landed on Earth for the first time in history. The meeting took place in the Rose Garden of the White House. It was a warm spring day, with flowers blooming and birds singing in the trees. The contrast between this peaceful setting and the desperate circumstances of the visit was not lost on anyone. The aliens stood in a group, uncomfortable in Earth's gravity and atmosphere. Most of them had never been to a planet like this. The Volani came from cold, dark worlds. The Keth preferred humid, swampy environments. The Tauruan lived on rocky planets with thin air, but they had come anyway. They had endured the discomfort because they had no other choice. President Grant received them graciously. She shook hands with each representative, learning their names and titles. She offered them specially prepared food and drinks that their species could consume. She treated them with respect and dignity. Then she sat down across from them and waited. High Counselor Rella spoke first. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. President Grant, thank you for receiving us. I know that we have no right to ask for your time. After what the Council did, we have no right to ask for anything. And yet here you are, the President said. Her tone was neutral, neither warm nor cold. Yes, because we have nowhere else to go. Rella took a deep breath. The Galactic Council was wrong. I was wrong. We looked at humanity and saw a threat. We saw your expansion, your technology, your military strength, and we became afraid. We thought that if we did not stop you, you would eventually take over everything. And now? Now we understand the truth. You were not taking over. You were holding everything together. Your patrols kept the peace. Your engineers kept the machines running. Your traders kept the economy moving. When you left, all of that disappeared. President Grant nodded slowly. We tried to tell you. Ambassador Moore explained many times what would happen if you pushed us out. We did not listen. We were too proud, too certain that we knew better. Rella's voice cracked slightly. We ask humanity to return. We ask you to help us rebuild what has been destroyed. We ask for your forgiveness. The word hung in the air. Forgiveness. It was not a word that appeared often in galactic politics. President Grant was quiet for a long moment. She looked at each of the alien representatives in turn. She saw fear in their eyes, desperation, hope. They had come a very long way to hear her answer. Return to what? Exactly. She finally asked. The same council that called us dangerous? The same organization that blamed us for problems we were solving? The same species that celebrated when we left? Councilor Venn spoke up. We will grant full restoration of all treaties. Everything will go back to the way it was before the vote. You will grant us? The president's voice remained soft, but there was steel beneath it. Counselor, we have been doing quite well without you. Our economy is stable. Our people are safe. Our colonies are thriving. The chaos that has consumed the galaxy has not touched us at all. Please, said the Taruan representative, young Kroth. His scales had turned pale with anxiety. My people are dying. The raiders attack us every week. We have lost half our territory. If you do not help us, we may not survive another year. I am sorry for your suffering, President Grant said, and she sounded like she meant it. But suffering does not change the facts. You chose to remove us from galactic affairs. You chose to believe that we were the problem. Now you are discovering that we were the solution. We know, Rella said quietly. We know we were wrong. What more can we say? You can tell me why anything would be different this time. What happens in 50 years when you forget how bad things were? What happens when a new generation of council members decides that humans are too powerful again? Do we go through this whole process once more? The aliens had no answer. They looked at each other, then back at the president. They had not thought that far ahead. They had been too focused on surviving the present to worry about the future. President Grant stood up. I will discuss your request with my government. We will give you an answer within 1 week. In the meantime, you are welcome to remain on Earth as our guests. She walked away, leaving the delegation standing in the garden, behind closed doors. The debate was intense. Secretary Park laid out the strategic situation. We could help them. We have the ships, the soldiers, the engineers. Our military is stronger than ever because we have been building up our defenses for the past year. The question is whether we should, said Admiral Parker, joining the meeting by video link. They threw us out. They insulted us. They blamed us for their problems. Now they come crawling back because they realize they need us. People make mistakes, Park replied. Nations make mistakes. That does not mean we should let billions of innocent people die to prove a point. It is not about proving a point. It is about consequences. If we rush back the moment they ask, we teach them that there is no cost to treating us badly. They will do it again. And if we refuse, then the galaxy collapses, probably. But that was their choice, not ours. President Grant listened to both sides. She understood the arguments. She felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her shoulders. Finally, she spoke. We will help them, but not on their terms. On ours. What terms? Park asked. New terms. Better terms. The Council had 12,000 years to run the galaxy. They made a mess of it. If we are going to fix that mess, we are going to do it our way. She began writing notes on a piece of paper. A new structure. New agreements. A new relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. It would take a week to finalize. It would take months to implement. It would take years to prove that it worked. But for the first time since the withdrawal, humanity was preparing to return to the stars. And when they did, everything would be different. 18 months had passed since humanity withdrew from the galaxy. Now, at last, they were coming back, but everything was different this time. The new treaties had been written in Washington, not on the council station. Human lawyers had drafted every word. Human diplomats had negotiated every term. The alien representatives had argued, complained, and protested, but in the end, they had signed. They had no choice. It was sign or die. And signing meant accepting a galaxy that humanity would lead. Admiral Steve Parker stood on the bridge of his flagship, the USS Resolution, watching his fleet prepare for departure. 200 warships floated in formation around him. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and the massive dreadnoughts that no other species could match. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Commander Rachel Stone, his second-in-command, stood beside him. She was younger than the admiral, but she had proven herself in a dozen training exercises. She was ready for real combat. "Fleet reports ready, sir," she said. "All ships standing by for jump to hyperspace." Parker nodded. He looked out at the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, billions of people were waiting for help that only humanity could provide. Pirates controlled whole sectors. Economies lay in ruins. Species that had existed for thousands of years were facing extinction. Think they have learned their lesson? Rachel asked. Parker considered the question. "For now," he said. "Give it a few centuries. They will forget again. They always do. Then why are we going back? Because it is the right thing to do. Because we can help, so we should help. Because if we let them fall, we would not be the species I want us to be." He turned to his communications officer. "Send the signal. All ships, jump to hyperspace." The fleet vanished in a flash of light. Their first stop was the Outer Territories, where the Blackfin Raiders had built their empire of crime. The pirates had grown confident over the past year. They had defeated the Turuan. They had conquered dozens of systems. They believed they were unstoppable. They were wrong. Admiral Parker's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Raider territory. The pirates detected them immediately. Their leader, a brutal alien named Varax, laughed when he saw the human ships. "Humans," he said to his commanders. "They think they can just come back and take everything from us. Show them what happens to fools who challenge the Blackfin Raiders." The Raider fleet assembled. 100 ships, the largest force they had ever gathered. They outnumbered the human fleet 2-1. Varax was not worried that he should have been. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the Raider fleet was destroyed. 87 ships burned in the void. 13 had surrendered. Not a single Raider escaped. Human losses were 2 destroyers damaged, none destroyed. Admiral Parker sent a message to every Raider outpost, every pirate base, every criminal hideout in the sector. The message was simple: surrender or be destroyed. You have 1 day to decide. Within 12 hours, the Blackfin Raiders ceased to exist. Those who surrendered were taken prisoner. Those who tried to fight were eliminated. Those who tried to run were hunted down by human patrol ships that seemed to be everywhere at once. Varax was captured alive. He spent the rest of his life in a human prison, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so quickly, while the military secured the borders. Human engineers spread across the galaxy to rebuild what had broken. Carol West returned to the Keth homeworld. The agricultural systems she had built years ago were in ruins. The machines had failed. The crops had died. Millions of Keth had starved during the year she was gone. She did not waste time on blame or anger. She simply got to work. Within a month, the first repaired systems were producing food again. Within 3 months, production had returned to pre-crisis levels. Within a year, It exceeded anything the Keth had ever seen before. The Keth government offered Carol any reward she wanted. Money, property, titles, anything. She asked for one thing. A promise that the Keth would never forget what had happened. A memorial to remind future generations what happened when they turned away from their friends. The Keth built her a statue in their capital city. It stood next to a wall engraved with the names of everyone who had died during the famine. Similar stories played out across the galaxy. Human doctors reopened medical stations that had been closed for a year. Human teachers returned to schools where students had been left without guidance. Human traders rebuilt the shipping networks that kept civilizations connected. Everywhere humans went, things got better. On the council station, the formal restructuring ceremony took place exactly 1 year after humanity's return. The Great Hall was full again. Representatives from 250 species filled the rising rows of seats. The crystal ceiling glowed a hopeful shade of green. Ambassador Jack Moore walked to the speaking platform. He was older now, with more gray in his hair and deeper lines around his eyes. But he walked with confidence. He had won. The motion before us, he announced, is the formal restructuring of the Galactic Council defense protocols. Under the new agreement, humanity will chair the Security Committee. All military operations in Council space will require human approval. All defense treaties will be negotiated through human diplomats. He looked around the hall. Hundreds of alien faces looked back at him. Some were grateful. Some were resentful. Leo Nanver. Some were still processing what had happened to their universe. All in favor? Every hand raised. Every tentacle. Every appendage. Every claw. Jack allowed himself a small smile. Motion carries. High Counselor Rella approached him after the ceremony. She looked tired, but there was something like peace in her eyes. You could have let us fall, she said quietly. After what we did to you, no one would have blamed you for walking away. Jack turned to face her. Some of our people wanted to do exactly that. They said you deserved to suffer the consequences of your choices. They were not wrong, maybe, but that is not who we are. Jack paused, choosing his words carefully. Humans do not abandon people, even people who abandon us first. We came back because billions of innocent people were dying, and we could stop it. It really is that simple. But the new treaties give you so much power. You control our military. You control our trade. You are the leaders of the galaxy now. We are, Jack agreed. And do you know what we plan to do with all that power? Rella shook her head. Keep the peace. Feed the hungry. Protect the weak. Build a galaxy where every species can thrive. He smiled sadly. The same things we were doing before when you decided we were the enemy. Rella was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I am sorry for everything. I know. And I accept your apology. Jack put a hand on her shoulder, a human gesture that surprised her. Now let us get to work. We have a galaxy to rebuild. He walked away toward a group of waiting diplomats. There were treaties to sign, schedules to coordinate, problems to solve. The work never ended. Outside the station, human frigates took up their positions in a protective ring. Human patrol ships began their long journeys to the outer territories. Human cargo vessels carried food and medicine to worlds that had been cut off for over a year. The galaxy watched. And slowly, cautiously, began to hope again. In the years that followed, the new order proved itself. Peace returned to regions that had known only war. Trade flourished along routes that humans protected. Species that had faced extinction recovered and grew strong. Some aliens resented human power. They whispered in corners about the danger of letting one species control so much. They warned that humanity would become tyrants, just like the Council had feared. but humanity never did. They used their power to help, not to dominate. They listened to other species. They shared their technology. They built partnerships instead of empires. And whenever someone asked why humans were so generous, why they worked so hard for people who had once rejected them, the answer was always the same: because that is who we are. The Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years before humans arrived. It would stand for 12,000 more, now under human leadership. Not because humans were stronger or smarter or more ruthless than other species, but because they understood something that the galaxy had forgotten. Real power is not about controlling others. It is about protecting them. It is about building things that last. It is about being there when people need you, even when they do not deserve it. Humanity had withdrawn from the galaxy, and the galaxy had collapsed without them. Now humanity had returned, and everything was finally going to be okay.